disgusting.
All right. Yeah, it was really frustrating for sure. Okay, so I think we're live streaming soon. Just a sec here. It's loading up. Yeah, I mean, the ending of that game. Man, I was there. It was really weird. It was so weird. All right.
I love the barn. The barn's a great place.
It was really great. We're going to talk about the barn and so much more here on this week's episode. But look, folks, Indiana did what they had to do. Look, I'm going to toot our own horn, okay? We were the one podcast last week that said everyone needs to step away from the ledge. 5-game losing streak and all. We painted the picture for you on how Indiana can turn this thing around. And you saw Xavier Johnson and a number of other Hoosiers step up on offense and help this team land a couple of big wins. By the way, you beat Maryland. Ain't exactly a cupcake win, because what did Maryland do over the weekend? Just beat Ohio State by 15. So maybe these teams that the Hoosiers are beating aren't all that bad. We're going to talk about our big conclusions from the past week of IU basketball and break down this massive Big Ten senior night showdown against Rutgers and so much more here on episode 242 of the Hoosiers Sound. I am your host, Nathan Krishnan. Joining me tonight is my normal podcast co-host, Matt Lukens. Matt, March is here.
Yeah.
John Rothstein said so. Okay.
Yeah, it's not March until counts down.
Exactly. You know, I could have looked at my calendar, but no, didn't need to waste my time. Just follow John Rothstein on Twitter. He tells you it's March. Look, Indiana did what they had to do.
Yeah. Got
2 wins. The offense took some strides. Xavier Johnson stood out. What were your big takeaways from IU's 2-0 week?
Look, what I said at the beginning of the year is that this IU program needed to get to 20 wins. And we've taken some slip-ups along the way. Notably, if you look back at our schedule, you will point at the 22-point giveaway at Wisconsin, the Penn State game that we lost by 3 at Penn State, the Michigan game where they shot like the Warriors from 3. And then you'll look at that Northwestern game where the 4 players were suspended, and you're going to be like, 5 players were suspended. Great. And you'll go, wow. But we have an opportunity this week now, after winning at home against Maryland and then surviving against Minnesota, to beat Rutgers, a team that in the eyes of many national basketball media, conglomerates, is right there on the tournament line with us and has maybe one of the best resumes over the last month of any team in Power 5 basketball. And then Purdue at Purdue. Do I expect us to win at Purdue? No, but it's possible. So we have a chance to clinch ourselves in the tournament. Now, I think if we get both wins this week, I know this is my thoughts on last week, but last week we have to have some context for what happened last week. Last week, we secured ourselves a shot at making the tournament. Now, both of these games are tournament games, all right? Against Rutgers and against Purdue. You win against Rutgers, I think you're in the tournament.
I think you're too.
I think you're in. If you win against Purdue as well, you're not only in the tournament, you've bumped yourself up 2 or 3 seed lines, I'm pretty sure. I think you go from an 11 seed where they're at now. We'll talk about that in a minute. But 11 or 12 seed, wherever you look, I think they'll make a 9 seed. If we can win these next 2 games, we'll have a 4-game winning streak going into the Big Ten tournament. Seeding-wise, the Big Ten tournament, I think will be like an 8 seed at that point.
9. It looks like a 9. Even if you beat Purdue, I think it's going
8
to
or
be
9,
a
9 seed, yeah.
And
like that's a pretty good seed line, honestly, for the Big Ten tournament. I think that's a very winnable game for us, depending on who we play. I genuinely think that this is a tournament team, and they have been the entire time.
Exactly.
They have faults. They're not perfect. They play against Minnesota, and they give me a heart attack. I'm watching that game with my parents, and my dad goes, and I hate this because I'm a very superstitious person. And my dad does the one thing you can't do when up 30. And my dad goes, at 10 minutes, oh, this is over.
No.
And I went, you did not say that.
Oh,
No. I was like, you know what's going to happen? And every 3-pointer that went in, I just stared daggers at him because I knew that this was going to happen. I have watched IU basketball way too long at this point to not know what was going to happen. And I thought Minnesota was going to come back and give us the most embarrassing loss in the last 10 years of IU basketball. And that includes losing to IUPUI and IPFW. If we had given up a 30-point,
I completely agree.
If we had given up a 30-point lead, damn near 30-point lead on the road, and they had come back in the last 10 minutes like they had done, I would have thrown
it would have been done.
Single pillow in my house into the street.
And that would be a mild reaction.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah. That would have been unacceptable. So the fact that it was even close is unacceptable.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. It is atrocious. But a win is a win, and we'll take it.
Yeah.
And nobody is writing a column in Yahoo Sports, Pat 40, about how the greatest comeback in the history of comebacks happened against Indiana basketball. So it won't happen.
And you even, and look, I know a few of you have a penny or two on these. Like Indiana has covered both of their last two games, and so that of course matters to some of you financially, but that also matters in the computers, right? Because at the end of the day, high level, right? What computers like KenPom or the net ratings do, they take, okay, how much are you supposed to win by? And then, okay, how much do you actually win by? And then the difference of that is how much you go up and then how much you go down. So Indiana went to that Minnesota game, was supposed to win by 3, ended up winning by 5. People feel pretty good about that, even after Minnesota went on a barrage. And I was there at Williams Arena. And I mean, it's hard, right? When you're an IU basketball fan, after the way that game ends, to act as if like everything's okay and like mission accomplished and it's all good. But Indiana for 30 minutes, right? A little like the immediate start of the game was a little bumpy, but for about a 30-minute stretch in the middle of that game, played the best basketball that they've played all season.
Yeah.
You're talking about communicating on defense, securing the rebounds on the glass, pushing it up the floor, getting good shots, good pace, not up and down the floor, but within that half-court offense. Guys were thinking almost a half step ahead. They were anticipating rather than reacting. Right. Some of the passes I saw were exceptional. Trace Jackson-Davis, the two major improvements he's made this year are blocking shots on defense and passing the ball on offense. His passing distribution has been exceptional this year.
Yeah.
And it's hard to remember that because the end of that game, Minnesota, and it wasn't much of IU's fault, especially when the Gophers had the ball. They were hitting ridiculous threes, and it was unbelievable in Williams Arena for about an hour and a half. You could have heard a pin drop for the most part in that building. You really could have. Gophers fans were disengaged, even though it was senior night. IU fans were making some noise. You could hear it. Any noise from the crowd was made by Hoosier Nation in Minneapolis. And then the final 6 minutes may have been one of the loudest crowds I've heard in a long time. I mean, especially because we had the whole COVID situation where fans weren't allowed in the arena. I mean, the last 6 minutes, it was deafening at times. And I don't think you can mention enough how critical it was there. Right at the end of the game, it was Trace Jackson-Davis and Xavier Johnson who made some big free throws. They missed a couple here and there, but overall, especially Johnson right at the end, made 2 to convert a 3-point lead to a 5-point lead and essentially close the deal there. Johnson was the star of the week. I mean, what a week for Xavier Johnson. Amazing. Someone we called on this podcast as the most indispensable player on this team back in early January, because the way he was able to conduct the offense, the way he's able to elevate this team's performance. We pumped out a lineup analysis article over on Indiana HQ. Bottom line, since the start of January, Xavier Johnson leads his team in plus minus. It's not really close. For fun fact, Trey Galloway and Rob Phinisee are next. And at the end of the day, Johnson's ability to run the offense, to orchestrate things as Mike Woodson brought him in to do, has clearly pushed this offense in another level. And that's why it's important that he stays out of foul trouble. That's why it's important that he refines his jump shot so he can hit a couple of more. Minnesota dared him to shoot. He shot. Maryland dared him to drive. He drove. Johnson scored 24 points in both games this past week. He also had 6 rebounds against the Gophers, 6 assists against the Terps, 8 assists against Minnesota. Matt, the floor is yours. Xavier Johnson was outstanding this past week, and I don't think it's that dramatic of a comment to say, as he goes, this team goes until the end of the season.
He's our most important player now. I don't know what's happened to Trace Jackson Davis since the start of Big Ten play, but he's definitely taken a step back. And basically,
you know what I think it is? I'm just going to say it right now. That injury he suffered a hip thing at Nebraska, and I don't think he's been back to his previous level since then. I'm just going to call that out. But anyway,
I think you're right, because the game after that was the preview game where he fouled out. The game after that was the Michigan game, which got smoked. Penn State, we didn't really need him. Maryland, we didn't really need him. And then the 5-game losing streak. And the last 2 games we played, he hasn't been the same. I think I pointed out earlier, I think he's been dealing with an injury. I think it looks like he's very obviously dealing with an injury. You know who isn't dealing with an injury? Our man.
Xavier Johnson. Man.
He's been lights out. 7 of 16 from the field against Minnesota, including 4 of 6 from 3. Now, he's not going to shoot 4 of 6 from 3 every night, but you know what? We'll take that because other teams' players decide to shoot like that against us. So we might as well have it happen for us. Again, against Maryland, he was, where is he at? 7 of 7 from the field, 3 of 3 from 3, 7 of 8 from the free throw line. He missed 1 free throw. No, not perfect. And he had 24 points. Perfect. We'll take that. He's been playing so controlled. He's been picking his spots really well. And what's really, really encouraging to me is how well he's played with Rob Phinisee on the floor. Finally getting Rob Phinisee back is such a huge deal for this team. If Trey Galloway can be back for the Rutgers game, that'll be even bigger, because I think when we are at our full capabilities, when we're at full force, we have our whole roster available and able to play. Remember, Rob Phinisee got injured when? The Purdue game? The Michigan game?
The Penn State game, right after
the Penn State game. Yeah. Right. The Penn State game. That 5-game losing streak coincides with us not having any guards, right?
Phinisee was out for the road win at Maryland, but really after that, it snowballed.
Right. And so having him back, when we have him, we've beaten Purdue. We've beaten Ohio State with him. We've damn near beat Wisconsin twice with him. Or once.
He was the one.
And we probably would have won at home against Wisconsin if we had Phinisee. I'm just going to point that out there.
Completely agree.
So I really believe in IU to win this game. Now the Knights, the Scarlet Knights, are nothing to scoff at, right? They are good. There's a reason why they have a winning record in the conference. It's the reason why they have recent wins over Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Illinois. Yeah. Now, yes, they've lost their last 3 games, but that's besides the point. They had a 4-game winning streak against Michigan State, Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Illinois. I mean, we'll take that. They have a loss against Purdue. They lost by 9 at Michigan, and then they lost at home against Wisconsin by 5. I understand, that's going to happen, right? That's just, it's the Big Ten. It's the gauntlet of the Big Ten. But if IU can really pull off this victory tomorrow night, we're in such a huge spot when it comes to qualifying for the NCAA tournament. And remember, as far as everything that's going on this year, the 5-game losing streaks, the turnover problems, Xavier Johnson being Xavier Johnson, whether he's good or bad, Trace getting injured, all the injuries we've dealt with. The whole goal for this entire season was never to win the damn national championship. Let's get that out of the way. We are not beating Baylor. We are not beating Auburn. And we'll talk about some matchups possibly for March Madness as they come up, seeding lines as they come up. But
the goal is to make the tournament, Matt.
IU's main goal was to make the tournament. And right now, if we win the game tomorrow, which is absolutely a playing game for us, I have a feeling that we will be in the tournament because they're going to go, look, at Purdue, you weren't supposed to win that anyways. That's fine. You won 3 of your last 4. Maybe we get a win in the Big Ten tournament. Maybe we don't. I don't think it even really matters at that point as long as we beat Rutgers tomorrow night.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. It does look like right now Indiana is on the path to face either Michigan or Michigan State in the Thursday game of the Big Ten tournament. There's a possibility the Hoosiers play Iowa as well. A win against Rutgers and a win in the first Big Ten tournament game will get Indiana into March Madness. At the end of the day, right, if IU does beat Rutgers, you're going to end up 10-10 in the regular season in Big Ten play, 19-11. And really, it should be 20-11 when you consider that they had to cancel a non-conference game against a cupcake team. The question I also have for the selection committee is how much do they consider the injuries with Trey Galloway and Rob Phinisee? Obviously, both players have been really crucial to this team's success. I see what Forrest Gray says in the live chat here. You all have to remember that Indiana's 18-10 at the moment, with Galloway missing 13 games and Phinisee missing 10. Indiana's 5 wins better without those injuries. I don't know about 5, but I do know that I agree at Forrest's point that at a minimum, Indiana wins some more games. And with both of them hopefully available for the NCAA tournament, that's something the tournament might consider compared to a team like Creighton, who is on the bubble along with Indiana. But the Blue Jays out in the Big East lost a key point guard just last week to a season-ending injury. So that's the kind of question that we might see the selection committee debate here. A little thing that might put IU over a bubble competitor of theirs. To me, I don't think it's that far-fetched to say Xavier Johnson is in the running to be Indiana's second best point guard that we've seen since Isaiah Thomas at Indiana University. Like Yogi Ferrell is the clear-cut number 1. There's no argument there whatsoever. You can talk about Tom Coverdale. You can talk about Michael Lewis, who had the assist record before Yogi Ferrell. You can talk about Jordan Hall, who's an incredible 3-point shooter. There are a couple of others who are in the conversation as well. And I'm not planting my flag and saying there's no doubt whatsoever, because some of those guys did it for 4 seasons, while Xavier Johnson's only been doing it for, 4/5 or 5/6 of it's not even a full season yet.
Yeah.
But the way he's able to distribute the basketball, push the pace, rebound when necessary, hit some shots in times of need. And if he puts together 2 or 3 more big games between now and the end of the season, I think his legacy at Indiana changes quite significantly. Matt, Xavier Johnson, as well as this offense, are doing something we haven't seen in a while. And that's showing improvement, showing progress, playing at their highest level at the most important point of the season.
Yes. I mean, look, games and seasons are based off of what you do in March, not what you do in February. So they can erase everything that happened this month by having a good performance over the next couple of weeks. And in fact, a lot of narratives are written in March. The program as a whole can take a total 180, starting with a good performance in March. Like,
absolutely.
Let's just say we win against Rutgers. Hypothetically, we win against Rutgers.
Reasonable.
We go to Purdue. It's Mackey. It's senior day. Close game and we lose.
Okay.
Fine. Whatever. We win 1 game of the Big Ten tournament.
I love it.
I think that might be the most unreasonable thing I said. But
absolutely.
we play Michigan. It's Juwan Howard's first game back.
Yep.
Let's say we beat Michigan, right? They don't shoot 80% from 3 this game. Okay. Now it's tournament time. We go in as 11 seed. Fine. What I said to Nathan before we started the podcast, if you want to be one of the top seeds, like upper numbers seeds, you want to be a 12 or an 11. And I literally, there's
why
not
is that, Matt? Matt, that sounds ridiculous. I have no idea why you would say something like that.
Okay, because here's why. Here's why. The 11th seed has a really easy, not easy, but an easier path to a Sweet 16 than, let's say, an 8 seed. Right? Like an 8 seed, you got to start off by playing
A good team, first of all, in the 9.
a 9 seed. You got to start by playing a good team, and then you play a 1 seed, right? If you start as 11, you play against a 6 seed, a better team than a 9 seed. Don't get me wrong,
for sure.
But they're beatable, right? There's a reason why they're off the 5 seed. We see it all the time,
right? 11-6, 12-5.
11-6. It's a tough matchup for the 6 seed. Then you move on to the next game. You're probably against a 5 seed, 4 seed.
If you're an 11, you'd face a 3. If you're a 12,
3 seed,
you'd face a 4 or 5.
Yeah. So you're against a 3 seed. Again, there's a reason why they're not on the 1 or 2 line. They're very beatable. Now, obviously, round of 32, we'll take that. But they have a good chance against a 3 seed. And a 3 seed right now, projected wise, is somebody like a Wisconsin, right?
Yep.
I think Wisconsin's projected.
Tennessee, that kind of conversation.
Those teams, I think, are very beatable for IU. I think I don't think IU's beating a 1 seed.
Texas
Don't get me
Tech,
wrong.
Villanova.
Yeah, I think those teams are Texas Tech, especially. I think is very beatable for this IU team, and so you just look at those teams and you go, okay, there's a chance, especially with the way seedings break down, that 11 seed Sweet 16 is very possible. That completely 180s the program, by the way, because that's a season which you come off a Sweet 16. You're going to have players returning like. I know Race Thompson's going through senior day activities, but I'm assuming Race Thompson comes back. Rob Phinesee's already stated that he's going to come back. All these players returning. Our freshmen getting 1 year older, Trey Galloway getting another offseason under his belt, then adding a 5-star in next year. All of a sudden, the program goes from not being ranked this year to almost being ranked, having a couple good wins, and
building that foundation.
Block, right? This is, like UCLA. Speaking of teams, had floundered. Was mediocre last year. Okay, they had Jaime Jaquez, who was supposed to be this really good player, and they just couldn't figure it out during the regular season. They get an 11 seed going in the NCAA tournament. They make the Final Four. Yeah, right.
Johnny Juzang, Tiger Campbell, right? That whole crew.
A whole 5-star class starts coming in for the next year. They get it rolling, and now they were top 25 teams this year, and they're probably going to be a 4 or 5 seed this year with another really good chance to make another run in the national championship. Why can't IU do that? Like, why can't that be us? Why can't Trace Jackson Davis be what Jaime Jaquez can be? Why can't Xavier Johnson be what
Tiger Campbell or Johnny Juzang, right?
Johnny Juzang was. Why can't that be us? There's no reason why that can't.
And what's the beauty of college basketball, right? It's why it's the best format of all the major sports we have.
Yeah.
Because for 275 teams or whatever, right? You always have an incentive to continue to get better, to continue to improve. There's no tanking, but there's also not some sort of arbitrary committee that says, okay, only the 4 best teams like they have in college football have a chance to win a trophy. No, like you have the chance at winning your conference tournament title. You have a chance to win a game or 2 in the NCAA tournament, even if you're not a legitimate Final Four threat. You have a chance to win a game or 2 and completely change your legacy. The best part about college basketball right now, I completely agree, Matt. 80% of the story for IU basketball has not been told yet for this season. That's crazy, right? And it's hard to remember because there have been some big wins, and that's part of the 20%. You beat Purdue, that's part of the 20%. You beat Ohio State, that's part of it. You had those suspensions that sort of derailed your season in the middle before you got, I guess, to continue the metaphor, the train back onto the track. So your point, I completely agree. If you can sneak in as an 11 or 12, by the way, something Indiana has not done in a long time. Indiana has always been either in that 1, or I think there were a 4 back in 2016, a 4 or 5 seed back in 2016. Indiana hasn't sort of been in that 11, 12 range or 10 range in a while. According to Joe Lunardi with ESPN Bracketology right now, he has Indiana as an 11 in the first 4 in. The last 4 in, and so you would play in that last 4 game against Memphis, but a win there means you would face St. Mary's in the round of 64. A win there means you would face Tennessee in the round of 32. Of course, those 3 seeds or those 4 seeds, they could get upset in the first round as well, something that really won't happen to a 1 seed unless you're Virginia a couple of years ago. So plenty to talk about as far as the Hoosiers are concerned. IU had not scored 70 points for the entirety of February until this past week, and they did it twice. They did it against Maryland. They scored 74, including 13 straight baskets at one point in the game. And then Indiana went out and scored 84 at Minnesota in a regulation game, the most points they had scored since beating Syracuse in double overtime, and since losing to Syracuse in double overtime. Sorry for that flashback. But Indiana, again, 84 points against the Gophers, and that was even with the struggling few minutes there down the stretch. No question about it. So you're starting to see a little bit more involvement with Miller Kopp. You're starting to see some go-to half-court sets seemingly out of timeouts for Parker Stewart. You're seeing a couple of guys make some hustle plays. You're seeing Tamar Bates trying to get his footing with his minutes in the high teens or low 20s in each of these games. And of course, Rob Phinisee working his way back in. We'll see when Trey Galloway returns. By the way, Indiana did announce that Race Thompson and Parker Stewart will be giving senior night speeches after the game on Wednesday. And we will talk about the Hoosiers and the Scarlet Knights in just a minute. But first, it's time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU sports. And we're going to tip our cap to Grace Berger, the superstar on IU's women's basketball team, one of many stars on that team. She was named first team All Big Ten. Shout out to Mackenzie Holmes, Nicole Collier, Cardano Hillary, and Alexa Gulbe for finishing second team. Cardano Hillary made all defense. Allie Patberg was honorable mention and became just the third Hoosier all time to get 4 separate All Big Ten mentions. So shout out to Allie Patberg as well. Also, tip a cap the IU men's swimming and diving program, who won the Big Ten title. So a lot of good news for Hoosiers all across the different athletic programs. The women's basketball team has hit a rut. They have lost some games to all really good teams. Talk about Iowa twice, talk about Michigan, you talk about Maryland in the regular season finale. The Hoosiers are a 5 seed in the Big Ten tournament in Indianapolis. Can't wait to see what they do. They're fighting to be one of the teams in the top 4 seed lines. That really matters in women's basketball because that means you get to host the first weekend of March Madness. Of course, you know Assembly Hall will be rocking if the Hoosiers can get that opportunity. So can't wait to see what IU does there. If you'd like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for The Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at Indiana HQ and at The Hoosier Sound. If you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. That kind of support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. A like, a share, a subscribe, a retweet, all those help significantly as well. Matt, let's talk NCAA tournament real quick. Indiana currently, depending on where you look, stands as an 11 seed, a 12 seed. I've seen as high as a 9 in some computer-based metrics, and of course as low as completely out of the picture. Bracketmatrix.com is the site I love going to. It compiles all sorts of different brackets that are out there and churns out sort of one final seed number for your team that you're looking for. Indiana's an 11 in Joe Lunardi's ESPN bracket. There's an 11 seed according to Delphi Bracketology, which is notoriously one of the most accurate projections out there. In fact, on Delphi, they have Indiana avoiding the first 4 altogether and getting straight into that field of 64 that plays on Thursday and Friday of March Madness. Matt, first question here. Is 19-11 good enough? You beat Rutgers, you lose to Purdue, or, I mean, I guess you could flip it. You lose to Rutgers and you beat Purdue. Either way, 19-11. Does that get you in, even if you lose that first game in the Big Ten tournament, or do you think Indiana has to seal the deal with that first game in that Big Ten tournament?
I think 19-11 is fine. But if you're 19-11, you're gonna be in the first 4 play-in games, and if you're 19-11, you're also like you're begging people to lose in their tournaments as well. Like you're going to need some help. Yeah. I think they'll probably get some help. I think they'll probably get some help because Nathan and I were talking about this before. Like Power 5 basketball this year is just bad. It's very top heavy. So I think they're going to be fine. I'm making a tournament, honestly, because I think some of the lower seeded teams that are kind of on the bubble and have had some interesting performances recently, a la Rutgers. It's just they're not going to be able to do it in March, especially against some of the big boys. So I think IU should be fine with 1911, but it's going to be clinching cheeks for that Big Ten game, of course. As it always is. It's a lot easier if you win or 2 games this week. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it really is. And you kind of leave it up in the hands of the committee as far as, okay, what are their impressions of the Big Ten? If you look at the computers, the Ken Pom, for example, Sagarin say that the Big Ten is the 3rd best conference in college basketball after the Big 12 and the SEC. You would like to avoid that as much as possible. Yeah, 2 wins this week helps. I think if you win that first game of the Big Ten tournament, that helps. I love Forrest Gray's comment in the live chat. He says Indiana could win multiple games in the Big Ten tournament. It's not like the 1 seed in the Big Ten this year has been all that threatening. Indiana's beaten Purdue, and Indiana's hung right there with Wisconsin really for 80 minutes this season, right, over 2 games. So I think that's a perfectly legitimate claim. And that's where I think Mike Woodson's mindset will really come into play here. And you tip your cap to Woodson, right? I mean, think about this. When you look big picture, I know that frustrations have been there this year, but the start of the year, what was the problem? Turnovers. Yep. Well, by and large, Indiana's fixed the turnover
anymore. Not a problem.
Middle of the season, towards the end here, what's been the big problem? The offense, right? Up until really a week and a half ago, the offense was a mess. Well, last week, Indiana not only put the results, if you watch that game, and I was able to watch it from a bird's eye view at Williams Arena, things just looked cleaner. They looked cleaner than they did against a lot of teams that you saw earlier this year. The ball really didn't get stuck all that much. It was moving. They were finding open guys. They were getting good shots. They were changing their looks. So the offense looks better. Now the last issue, and you really only have time to fix one more problem. Okay, you don't have time to fix 7. You only have time to fix one more problem. Last problem for Indiana really here is just how to close halves, right? Your last few minutes of each half, how do you really nail that down? How do you make 1 or 2 fewer mistakes? How do you make 1 or 2 more baskets? How do you force 1 or 2 more turnovers in order to make sure the close of each half goes your way? That's Indiana's biggest problem right now. I'm looking forward to see if and how Mike Woodson fixes that issue.
I have a fix.
Oh, wow.
And the fix is pretty easy. It's getting Trace Jackson Davis back to being Trace Jackson Davis. I think there's been a bunch. I was talking about this during the 5-game losing streak. I feel like nobody on this team had progressed. I think after the last 2 games, and even after the last 3, I feel like there are some players on this team have progressed. Xavier Johnson mainly,
I agree,
has progressed significantly. And so if he continues to play the way he does, Trace, if he gets back to peak form, this team is going to be scary. And I think absolutely a lot of the times the teams go on big runs against us is when Trace is on the floor, and the offense looks way worse when he's on the floor. And that's because he's just not playing as well as we're used to him playing. He's used to getting 20 points a game, and he's got 10 points against Maryland and 14 points against Minnesota. No offense to Minnesota's bigs, but Minnesota's bigs are terrible, and he should have had way more than
they're not even big. I mean, that's
the
thing.
Exactly. So Trace has got to get back to being Trace, and if he can do that, I think this team is a lot of pieces are going to start fitting together. But the main puzzle piece, which is Trace right now, is not exactly fitting the way it should be, and so that's on him to feel a little bit better going into the next couple of games.
Yeah, we'll see sort of how he physically recovers here. Another big thing, especially in the Big Ten, is that teams know him. They've scouted him for 3 years now. They know the different nuances and subtleties to his game, never mind the big important stuff that he does well. That's where I think Trace Jackson Davis can be a really significant part of this team in the NCAA tournament if Indiana can get there. And that brings us to our weekly podcast poll over on the Hoosier Sound Twitter account, where you can follow us and cast your vote over at the Hoosier Sound on Twitter. All of these players are important, but who's the most critical to the success of this basketball team for the rest of the season? Your three options were Xavier Johnson, Trace Jackson Davis, and Race Thompson. This was a landslide. I was not expecting it to be such a disparity between the winner and the other two options. Matt, Xavier Johnson got 88% of the votes in this poll. And
That's
so
the least surprising thing I've ever heard.
Hoosier Nation is smart. You know, they've noticed that. I understand Trace Jackson Davis had All-American status coming into the season. But the one thing, you know, Jackson Davis regularly puts up double figures, a good number in the rebound column. His overall level of consistency is there. We've seen ups and downs from Xavier Johnson, and the ups really do change the game for this team. So I definitely agree with Hoosier Nation as far as that's concerned. Johnson, 88% of the vote. Jackson Davis got 10%. Race Thompson got 2%. Over 100 votes have been cast in this post. This poll hasn't even been up for an hour. So make sure you head over to our Twitter account at the Hoosier Sound and cast your vote. But overall, when you're watching games this week or next week, the teams that you should hope for losing games down the stretch here include as many as possible out of the list of Notre Dame, Wake Forest, Creighton, Miami, Memphis, SMU, Loyola Chicago, BYU, and Virginia Commonwealth. Keep an eye out for those teams. I saw Dayton is playing right now. I think they're too far out of the picture in order to get back into the conversation. But, you know, if they're able to lock down a road win at Richmond tonight, perhaps the bracketologists. Oh, well, see, there you go. So I'm glad you called that out there. That's going to be interesting to see here how much Dayton gets a bump going forward. Of course, those bid stealers are always so dangerous. What do we mean by that? We mean teams in small conference or mid-major conference tournaments that win a league where the best team is already locked in as an at-large. So keep your eyes out for that as well. San Francisco is an interesting one in the West Coast Conference. How does the Atlantic 10 shake out? Will there be a bid stealer there? The Mountain West looks like it has 4 teams that will get at-large bids. If one of the teams 5th and back end up winning that conference tournament, well, they're going to get a bid too, and that'll kick out one of these at-large teams. So the good news for Indiana is that they can do more than just live on the bubble. They can win themselves off the bubble here with games against Rutgers and Purdue and then the Big Ten tournament. And Wednesday night, the Hoosiers take on the Rutgers Scarlet Knights in one of the biggest, most highly anticipated regular season games of postseason consequence that we've seen in a while as far as the Indiana basketball program is concerned. And good news for the Hoosiers, it's at home at Assembly Hall where Rutgers visits Indiana. It's a tip of 7 p.m. Eastern Wednesday night on Big Ten Network with Brandon Gaudin and Robbie Hummel, an A-plus commentary team on the call for that one. Indiana is currently a 5.5-point favorite, according to the odds makers, with an over-under of 132. So you can do the math there. Indiana is projected to win something like 68-63, 69-64, something in that area. The Hoosiers have lost 4 straight to Rutgers, including 6 of their last 7. IU went 0-3 last year. The crazy thing is IU won its first 5 games against Rutgers after the Scarlet Knights made their transition to the Big Ten, but recently it's been an absolute mess. Rutgers, by the way, does not have the same team that they had last year. Okay, so a lot of folks out there citing that Indiana went 0-3 against Rutgers last season, it doesn't matter, right? And it doesn't even matter that, you know, if Indiana went 3-0 against Rutgers last year, I'd say it wouldn't matter either, okay? And so Rutgers has lost Jacob Young, who transferred out to Oregon, Montez Mathis, who transferred to St. John's, as well as Miles Johnson, their big center, who transferred out to UCLA. Meanwhile, Indiana's team, as all of you know, is completely different as well. Rutgers has dropped 3 in a row, as you mentioned, Matt. Metrics hate them. They are on the bubble, and Rutgers and Michigan are in that bubble mix as well that you want to root against here as far as Indiana is concerned. But Rutgers is 75th in KenPom, 92nd in the net. They're horrible on offense, but they have a strong defense. They play 9 guys. Matt, their starting lineup has been pretty consistent all year. Geo Baker, Paul Mulcahy, Caleb McConnell, Ron Harper Jr., Cliff Omoruyi, What are your thoughts on Rutgers? What are one or two matchups you're excited to see as the Hoosiers take on the Scarlet Knights in a big bubble battle?
Yeah, who stops Ron Harper? Because he's
Great
a guy
question.
who's gone off against
don't
IU
know.
the last couple of years. And I don't know, because he's one of those guys that's, he sits at 6'6", 6'7". And look, we don't really have anybody that can defend him, right? He's a little bit too small for Trace. He's too big for our guards. And so he's got to be guarded by somebody like Parker Stewart or Miller Kopp. And those guys have gone off against IU this year. Sadly, it's just been the case. Those are the types of guys that have killed IU as the year has gone on. There's those wings players that can make plays. And so I'm looking at him and I'm going, somebody's got to step up and stop him. He averages 15 a game, 6 rebounds, almost 2 assists, a steal. He's 80% from the free throw line and 38% from three. So he's a guy you can't leave open. You can't let get comfortable. You can't give him space. You can't let him drive. There's not a lot, right? Yeah, there's not a lot you can let him do. But if you can stop him, I think the other part of the team is very beatable. Geo Baker, another guy, not a shooter, by the way. He's a 31% 3-point shooter.
He's never really been a shooter.
Never been a shooter, but he's good at getting to the rim. And Clifford Omarui, I think that's how you say his last name, as a guy who is sizable. He's not 7 feet tall, but he's athletic, just like Trace is. And he's somebody that, look, Trace has been struggling against people that I think are terrible at guarding Trace. And Clifford Omarui should be one of the better guys in the Big Ten at guarding Trace, because they're kind of the same build. And so this is a real test of where is Trace at? How is he playing? And how is he going to deal with a guy that can go up with his and even match his athleticism that Trace not often gets matched?
Yeah, absolutely. And Omari was a highly rated 4-star recruit. I mean,
he's almost a 5-star,
just a little underneath that 5-star threshold. So very much somebody who, he's not some type of ungifted player physically, but I like your point about those wingish players. I really heard Indiana. Think about Malachi Branham at Ohio State, Johnny Davis at Wisconsin. It was shockingly Chris Murray at Iowa who wrecked the Hoosiers. But this is the kind of thing that you've seen Indiana have problems with repeatedly. I'm curious to see what Mike Woodson's game plan is. I don't hate Miller Kopp defensively. I don't. I think that's been his biggest strength all year. But again, you're facing someone in Harper who has the ability to score in a number of different ways. His 16 plus points per game right now is 7th in the Big Ten in conference games only. The leader in assists in the conference is a Rutgers player as well. It's Paul Mulcahy, who's a bit of a combo guard, very unusual type of player as far as the skill set involved. But he's someone that Rutgers coach Steve Peichel has given a lot of freedom in the offense to really operate at the discretion that Mulcahy wants to, right? When you think about Geo Baker, Baker is someone who, like shooting the ball, sort of works in this offense as sort of an off the ball type of role, whereas Mulcahy really facilitates and distributes. Meanwhile, you have Caleb McConnell out there who can make a jump shot if it's necessary for his team. He's struggling this year, but the stroke is there, and you could see him make 1 or 2 big ones here on this game Wednesday night. I'm curious to see how Xavier Johnson and Race Thompson do as far as Indiana is concerned, because IU's offense is going to have a tough time against the Scarlet Knights, but Xavier Johnson and Race Thompson have been 2 players that have I think taken some good strides here as of late. And Johnson, I think, has the physical advantage over Geo Baker or Paul Mulcahy. And as someone who was there in Minneapolis on Sunday night, when I talked to Xavier Johnson along with the media after the game, his mindset is just locked in right now. I know a lot of people can look at box scores and you can watch the games, and that's a really good way, more often than not, of saying how good a player is or how strong a player is performing. But as far as between the ears right now, Xavier Johnson is a killer. he is rocking and rolling right now. And that doesn't guarantee that against Rutgers he's going to score 20 points. For all we know, he could go 2 for 12. We don't know how it's all going to play out, but just wanted to comment there as far as someone who I think is in the right frame of mind right now to not only beat Rutgers, but do more here for the rest of the year. Matt, I also noticed that the Scarlet Knights have a tough time with turnovers. And Indiana is a team that has been able to force some here down the stretch. So that's one stat I'm going to be looking forward to. As far as particular things, as far as the matchup in the paint, on the arc, defense, offense, is there any other aspects of the game you're looking at as far as this massive matchup is concerned against Rutgers?
Yeah. I mean, one, how are we going to get any offense against their defense? They're like a team that likes to grind.
Yeah, I mean they held Wisconsin to 66 just the other day. You know, it's even in their losses, they're low scoring games. You think about Michigan only scored 71. Purdue put a crooked number on them, but Illinois held to 59. Ohio State was held to 64. Michigan State held to 63. If you can get 70, wow, mission accomplished.
Yeah, this is a team that thrives on disrupting your ball movement, which is not something IU has been really good at. So I'm just waiting for IU to kind of get out in the court and show what they can do. Again, like defensively, I spoke on who's stopping, who's stopping Ron Harper and who's stopping their important guys on their team. Like, because I think our subs, our bench is going to outdo them. I don't think they're as deep of a team as we are. And that's fine. We might make up points in there, but when it's time, and I feel like this is going to be a close game, when it's crunch time, who is going to step up and make shots for this team? I don't know. So I'm really hoping that Trey Galloway's back. I think he'll be a really big spark.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see what happens there.
And I'm actually looking at Rob Phinisee. He's got to hit a couple shots this game because we're going to need some perimeter shooting. And when we need perimeter shooting this year, against in big games, we got to look to big shot Rob. So I'm looking at him to maybe get a shot or two up and through the net tomorrow.
Yeah, I love your comment as far as the bench production is concerned. There, you talk about Phinisee. Rutgers does not have much depth going for them. You're talking about a 9-man rotation, but overall, just a lot of the load is really carried by their 5 starters. If you're talking about maybe one bench player who could be a problem, it's Mog, who's sort of a big. He can pitch in. He's got 5 fouls to give. He's capable of pulling down some rebounds. But really, you think about Indiana's bench, guys like Tamar Bates, guys like Michael Durr, is it, whoever you can pick, right? As far as Jordan Geronimo, who's going to come in off the sideline? Rob Phinisee is included in this conversation as well and make a big impact, make a big difference against Rutgers. I can't wait to see the answer to that question. So let's get after it, Matt. It's time. Indiana plays Rutgers. The Hoosiers are 5.5-point favorites, according to Vegas. If you go look at the KenPom projections right now, Indiana is also projected to win 67-62. At the end of the day, who wins this game and by how much?
IU wins. Please God, IU wins 66-59.
There you go. And you've got Indiana taking care of business at home, putting themselves in a good spot as far as NCAA tournament consideration is concerned.
And they cover.
And they would cover in that situation too. Not only do I think Indiana will win, I think Indiana's going to win by double figures against Rutgers.
That's Indiana. A bold prediction.
I mentioned this to you before we started. I actually don't think Rutgers is going to have much of an argument as far as NCAA tournament consideration is concerned. This is a team that I've watched over the course of the season, and a lot of people like to point to the fact that they lost 3 horrible games at the start of the year. But since then, the picture hasn't been all that pretty either. They had a really hot 2 weeks, and they deserve credit for that. And it counts on their resume, 100%. But even after this team lost to DePaul, Lafayette, and UMass in November, they lost some pretty surprising games as far as 17-point defeat at Penn State, a road loss to a shorthanded Minnesota team, not a full-strength Minnesota team like you saw Indiana face on Sunday. Rutgers lost at home to Maryland, a team that Indiana beat in College Park a few days later. Rutgers lost at Northwestern when the Scarlet Knights were at full strength. And even just over the weekend, they lost by 5 at home to Wisconsin, a game where Rutgers was a 2.5-point favorite. So overall, I look at Rutgers and I think about the players that they lost. And I think they're a little bit like discount Michigan from the past year, where a lot of people overlook the fact that Michigan lost key players like Isaiah Livers and Franz Wagner, among others, and expected Michigan to sort of repeat what they did last year. Now they're losing some games. People are like, oh my God, Michigan's losing. Well, yeah, when you lose key NBA players or whatever, you're going to lose. Rutgers is not that level, but they lost some really integral pieces that helped turn their program around. And I think while they did have a hot 2 weeks in early February, this is a game where I love Indiana's frame of mind right now. I love the strides they made on offense over the course of the past week. Again, you might be saying, well, Indiana did it against Maryland and Minnesota, you dummy. Well, Maryland held Ohio State to 60 points over the weekend.
Yep.
So it's not just the fact that Maryland is bad or Minnesota is bad. I really did see progress from the Hoosiers on the offense side of the ball. I see engagement. I see involvement. I see a real desire to get better from everyone on this team. And I'm looking forward to seeing IU win on Wednesday night by a final of 68-55. I think you're going to see a good combination of defense and offense. I think Indiana's defense is going to cause a lot of problems as far as turnovers for Rutgers. I think one big key, though, is Indiana has to stay out of fouling Rutgers a lot. Indiana has a propensity to foul. Rutgers will make their free throws. That's a big change from the Rutgers team you saw last year. This Rutgers team will make some free throws if you give them the chance to get to the line, avoid fouling, and that should help the Hoosiers get a big win. We're going to quickly talk about the Purdue game after this. It's time for a social media shout out. And really, the IU baseball program deserves a lot of credit here for executing a proper home opener. Again, last year, this is a Hoosier baseball program that did not have fans in attendance. And the previous year, their season was something like 1 or 2 weeks long before COVID-19 wrecked it. So you finally saw a full-scale crowd back at Bart Kaufman Field. Alcohol sales are up and running in Bloomington as well at baseball games. If you are able to make it out, Indiana took care of business today over Miami, Ohio. So the baseball team, who had a bit of a rough start to this year against some really good programs, gets a nice home win. So make sure you follow Indiana baseball over on social media if you have not already. While you're at it, make sure you give us a follow, like, retweet, subscribe to our stuff at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Matt, on Instagram, we're not Indiana HQ, but what are we?
Indiana.HQ.
Exactly, Indiana.HQ. There we publish all sorts of pictures and videos and content from the different arenas that we're at. I can't wait to see what we put on our Instagram account here during the end of the regular season, Big Ten tournament, NCAA tournament. Cannot wait for that. Man, we're not going to dive into a great detailed preview of this Purdue game on Saturday, but the Hoosiers will take on the Boilermakers Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern. Purdue is a team that Indiana beat earlier this year, back in January. It was a 68-65 win. Rob Phinisee obviously had an exceptional game, scoring 20 points. Xavier Johnson was really good against Purdue as well, scoring 18. Trace Jackson-Davis was in foul trouble all day. Race Thompson at 9 points, 9 rebounds. Purdue's a strange team, a team that's struggling on the defensive side, a team that occasionally just has a really tough time stopping teams. You saw Johnny Davis in Wisconsin go into Mackey and score 74. You saw Michigan torch Purdue in the middle of February. Wolverines won that game 82-58. Northwestern put some points up on the board against Purdue. Rutgers scored over 70 against Purdue. I know the expectation is that Indiana is going to lose this game, and it should be, but what can Indiana do to at least stay in it, if not pull off the upset?
The same thing we did at home. Get under Jaden Ivey's skin, and our big guys need to play very well defensively. If we can do that, we can beat Purdue. Purdue's very beatable, right? Like at the beginning of the year, they looked fantastic. Don't get me wrong. They looked unbeatable to start the year. As the year has gone on, if you can make their big guys uncomfortable and you can make Jaden Ivey uncomfortable, the rest of the team is not going to beat you. They're great role players. Don't get me wrong. Sasha Stoyanov is just a fantastic role player. Eric Hunter is a good role player. Thompson is a great point guard.
Yeah. They
fit their roles fantastically well, but they're nothing without the three main cojones.
Yeah.
The three main amigos
hombres,
doing their thing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Jaden Ivey, Zach Edey, Sasha Stefanovic, all incredible players in their own right. Stefanovic was 1 for 7 from 3 against Indiana in the first matchup. There is an interesting wrinkle to this game. I don't think it's going to matter all that much. But if Wisconsin can beat Purdue tonight and the Boilermakers visit the Badgers again later tonight, we're recording Tuesday nights and 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central tip. If Wisconsin wins that game, the Badgers win the Big Ten outright, and Purdue has not that much incentive to play amazing. I don't think that
they do.
They do.
They hate us, and it's at home, and it's senior night.
Can you avenge the first loss as well? I don't think it matters that much, but if maybe you don't see Purdue open up the entire playbook, right, to use a football analogy, that might be something that happens in this game on Saturday afternoon. But Matt, when it's all said and done, who do you think wins this game on Saturday afternoon, and by how much? Ken Palm, by the way, has Purdue winning this one 77-68, and they gave Indiana a 20% chance of winning.
20% is a lot bigger than I give us. I said this from the start of the year. This game is an L. It's a hard L. If we were going to beat Purdue, we were going to beat them at home. And guess what? We did. And thank God we did, because we're not beating them at home. We're not beating them in Mackey. All right, let's just be honest. We can't, for the love of God, we cannot win on the road as it is. We have a hard time holding a 20-point lead on the road as it is. And that's not with an entire crowd of however many are in Mackey Arena screaming their freaking heads off saying IU sucks. Okay. Like, this is their game of the year. And let's be honest, this is their Super Bowl. This is their Super Bowl.
It's not their Super Bowl.
It is their Super Bowl.
No, it's not.
Yes. It's not. Okay, it's not their Super Bowl.
So what do you think the final score ends up?
Final score for those worthless schmucks in West Lafayette is 70-65 Purdue. We will keep it close. We will make it tough. We'll make the crowd in those stupid bleacher seats kind of sweat a bit. But I think Purdue nonetheless comes out on top.
Frankly, I think if Indiana beats Rutgers on Wednesday, they keep it close against Purdue. And I think if Indiana loses to Rutgers on Wednesday, Purdue wins by 25. So I really see it going in that direction. Let me ask you this real quick, and then we'll get into closing thoughts. Does it matter for Indiana's tournament resume that they keep it close?
Yeah. Look, it's recency bias for sure. But style points matter.
They do.
Okay?
Especially matter in the computers.
Style point matter, and somehow style points matters. It used to be style points didn't matter in the computer. Now it matters. Here's the deal. Teams are going to remember, and bracketologists and the people voting and the committee are going to remember IU much more fairly. Let's say we beat Rutgers tomorrow and keep it close. Like, they've won 3 of their last 4 after having a rough stretch, which included suspending players. 3 of their last 4, including an extremely close loss on the road on senior night to their arch bitter rival,
who's a top 15 team right now. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's be honest, the recency bias will be huge. And it'll be a benefit for IU to keep it close.
Yeah, absolutely. I know if nothing else, Indiana fans can root for that Purdue-Wisconsin game to go into 3 or 4 overtimes here, just to try to tire out the Boilermakers a little bit. By the way, we're going to wrap up our podcast before this game ends, but right now in the final minute, Nebraska leads at Ohio State by 6. Chalk that up to Big Ten basketball is absolutely drunk, and the conference tournament is going to be absurd. So, Matt, as we wind down here, I do agree with you that keeping it close will matter. I think that helps Indiana's story going into Selection Sunday in less than 2 weeks, as far as, hey, yeah, won some games down the stretch, kept it close against great teams. I think that carries into the Big Ten tournament too. For example, you beat Michigan by 3 or 4 points, you lose to Wisconsin by 3 or 4 points. I think you can feel pretty confident about Indiana's chances going into Selection Sunday. But as we wind down, what are your closing thoughts here? Full hour here of IU basketball. Obviously, the Hoosiers recorded 2 big wins and now have a lot to play for this week.
Stay strong, my friends. Stay strong. As the fate tempts us in the next couple of days. This is crunch time, all right? And this team, we love them dearly, even though I can't stand watching them play basketball. We do love them dearly, and we really hope the best for them. Obviously, that's why we're fans, why you're even listening to this podcast, why you're even listening to me talk about them an hour and whatever it is into this podcast. So let's give them our best support we possibly can tomorrow, and then from our couches when we play Purdue on Sunday. And yeah, let's just win tomorrow, please.
Yeah, I think it's a fair perspective from your end. Completely agree with your sentiments. As I wind down, as we all wind down here on this Tuesday night, right? I think about Indiana's resume, and I think it will stand out more than people think right now that IU has not lost a game to a quad 3 or quad 4 team, because that's something they can hold in an argument against a lot of the mid-majors that we're fighting against as far as the bubble situation is concerned, because a lot of the conversations, a lot of the complaints that mid-majors teams have with the current selection process is that, well, the big guys get a lot of chances against big teams. But the thing is, right, when mid-majors teams, and there are a lot of them out there, lose to quad 3 and quad 4 opponents, you all of a sudden lose that part of the conversation against a team like Indiana, or against a team, I believe, like I think it's North Carolina or something, who's in the conversation, but doesn't have a bad loss on their ledger as well. That's the kind of thing that I think can help. Also, right, Indiana beats Maryland, who beats Ohio State in the same week. Indiana beats Minnesota twice, a team that has beaten Michigan in Ann Arbor this year. So overall, I think, I'm no expert, think that Indiana's situation is is on more solid ground than the general consensus believes right now. With that said, your shot of making the tournament completely goes out the door if you lose at home to Rutgers. So with that said, that about wraps it up for a 242nd show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. Thank you to our live audience. You're all beautiful people. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.
Peace and love, go Hoosiers.